Hello and welcome. My name is Tom. This is the Enthusiasm Project Season 6, Episode 10, the finale. Finally, it's the finale. Well, it's not the final finale. It's just an finale. It's the most recent one. So this is the last episode in this run of 10 episodes, and I'm super excited about that. We'll talk about that all the way at the end of this episode here. And then basically I'm going to take the month of May off, and then the premiere of season 7 will be on June 6th, Monday, June 6th. So a couple weeks off there, and then we will come back. Actually, in fact, just to celebrate that, since I will be taking time off from my podcast, that might be a good time for you to start your own podcast. You see where I'm going with this? So for the entire, actually from now, the time you're hearing this, through the entire month of May 2022, both of my podcasting courses, Podcaster Playbook and Podcaster Idea Book, will be 15% off if you use the promo code HOORAY. That's HOORAY. Hooray! And you get 15% off. If you want to check out either course and see if one of them might work for you, whether that's the playbook to produce a podcast or the idea book to come up with a concept for a show, just go to HiMyNameIsTom.com and click on courses. But of course, that brings us into today's episode. Now, we are on the last episode. I've been trying for the past 10 weeks to use a different microphone every single week. And I shouldn't say I've been trying, because I succeeded to use different microphones every week. And that makes me very happy because I was able to cycle through quite a few microphones. And so I wanted to wrap up this season on the old classic, the Rode Pod Mic. So you can applaud Mike, the Pod Mic, because that's what I am talking to you on today. Yay. Anyway, let's jump into today's topic, because last week I mentioned I was really excited about it, and this is a little more structured than normal, but I actually wanted to kind of share something that I haven't heard people talk about too much, and we've spent a lot of time talking about the flip side of it, and that is influencer etiquette. And I hate the term influencer, as maybe you do. I'm sick of it. I have influenza. And anyway, that was really bad. So basically, though, if you're like me, you probably aren't a fan of the word influencer, and you probably don't like the idea of thinking of yourself as an influencer. But for the sake of just brevity, communication, I'm going to say that what I do is a lot of influencer work. And if you do similar things to me, you've built up maybe a YouTube channel or a podcast, some kind of audience, and you leverage that in some way. Yeah, maybe it's an influencer. You have influence, right? You have influence to people listen to things that you say or take your advice on stuff. You influence people. It doesn't have to just be all of the terrible news stories that we see are associated with it. It doesn't have to just be all the vapid stuff of like, what, this person just takes selfies all day and they make 7 figures a year, or whatever the really, really negative connotations to influencer are. Maybe we can just put those on the shelf for today and then jump back into like a more broad term of just one who influences others. And that's kind of what we're going to be focusing on today. So as much as I hate thinking of like, yes, I am an influencer, and Lord knows I would never want my mom to be like, yeah, my son, he's an influencer. Yeah, he went to college for 8 years, but he's an influencer. No. But for the sake of today, that's what we'll talk about, because we've spent a lot of time in these episodes going over ways to kind of set yourself up for success as someone who leverages something you've built to earn some kind of income or maintain a relationship with an audience or build relationships with brands. I've talked so many times about my ethics statement, which is on my website, that kind of guides everything. I send that out every day to people who reach out, or companies who reach out. That has been one of those valuable things I've ever created. So you can, if you want to see it and you haven't seen it already, you can go to HiMyNameIsTom.com and then just click on ethics at the top. And you can also like copy that literally steal my ethics statement. It's totally the ethical thing to do. And you can modify it and use it for yourself if you want to. I'm always completely flattered when people do that. But I think it's hopefully a very helpful template. The way I have it structured is what works for me specifically. So you might want to add things, take out things, reword things. You have your specific things, how you want to handle stuff. And that might be different from how I handle things. But anyway, feel free to check that out. That has been it's been like the cornerstone of how I approach so much stuff. And now that it's been several years since I made it, it again is one of the best things I have made. But I feel like I've almost spent too much time talking about that side of things and not the other side of things. And you might be asking yourself, well, Tom, what is the other side of things? And that would be seeing things from a brand's point of view, which has not really been something I've advocated for, because it's always been sort of protecting yourself and standing up for yourself. But there's kind of, I guess I would call it a disturbing trend that I've seen with creators online, where there's actually two concerning trends. One of them is it's sort of this thing of creators posting, I don't know how else to call it, but like emails where they feel they have owned a brand, like wow, look at this, response, and it's literally a screenshot of an email where some brand is like, hey, we'd like to partner you with our product. We'll pay you $8 for 15 videos or some terrible deal or whatever. And then the person, instead of just ignoring the email or replying politely, the person replies with literally go F yourself, or it's just the most crude, awful, rude things. And then that's the reply that they've sent to the person. And then they take that and screenshot it and then brag about it on their social media. And to me, that is disturbing, because I get it. I get that there are scummy brands and companies out there. There are people trying to take advantage of you. But that kind of weird bragging it's not doing any of us any favors. And it seems like something that in the past year, especially, maybe I've just become more aware of it, but it seems like it's also become more commonplace. And it's things where people will start demanding. It just feels like it's posting a lot of very private conversations. Sometimes it's really rude responses. Sometimes it's very demanding. Like I see someone who's trying to defend themselves, like a brand might approach them for some kind of sponsorship deal, and the brand is lowballing them, or they feel that they're being lowballed. And so then they reply with, something that's overly stern. And I recognize this because I feel like I've been there myself in my teaching career, where especially when I left the first school I worked at and started a new media program at the second school that I worked at, I really knew at that point that I'd have to establish, I was starting something from scratch. So I had to help people understand why it was valuable. I had to protect it. I had to also really promote the value of it so that it would continue to be something that would be valued and funded. And that was all very important. But for especially the first year I was there, I was honestly way too aggressive with it. And I had to learn to kind of rein that in. I had to figure out the finer points of being firm, standing up for yourself, but also being diplomatic and being approachable and being empathetic and seeing things from another person's point of view. And I feel like I'm seeing that same struggle play out with creators online who fortunately have gotten over the point where a lot of newbie creators will just want to work with a brand and they don't care what it is. As soon as they get any kind of sponsorship or partnership email, they agree to all these terms. They put themselves in a bad position and it messes things up. And I feel like a lot of people have gone past that, and they've gotten to the point where they're like, no, I want to make my own terms and I want to, I want my value to speak for itself. But then it's almost too aggressive. And then to show, to brag about being rude and aggressive, to me is just immature and childish, and it's actually kind of hurting all of us because it's giving a bad reputation to lots of different creators when somebody does something like that. And there's sort of this two-way street to it. I think some of it just comes down to ego and entitlement. I think, creators can sometimes be told, yeah, when a brand approaches you, oftentimes they're going to lowball you, and you need to make sure that you charge your worth and do it on your terms. And that's all true. And I've said stuff like that too. But I think people take it a little too far, and they forget that it is a relationship that you're building if you actually want to work with the brand, and there really can't be room for entitlement on either side. The other trend that I've noticed people posting a lot about is really just trashing brands so much and posting what seems to be like confidential emails. Not that there's anything super secretive in them, but it seems like, these are emails that were sent not intending to be posted publicly online, and it has people's full names and people's full email addresses and stuff in them. And it's creators who are upset because they are being like harassed by a brand about creating content for something that they were sent for free. So, I don't know, a brand might send them something, whatever. We'll say a microphone. And the person says, okay. And then the brand keeps every week or so checking in saying like, hey, where's the video on the microphone? Where's the video on the microphone? And then eventually the creator goes online and does like a rant of, like, I'll never do this, like your piece of crap product, blah, blah, blah. And, this is why I would never recommend anyone work with you because of these aggressive tactics that you have to take advantage of creators. And they post an email thread where the person's like, hey, just wanting to know where this is. I don't know the terms of those deals, but what I can tell you is that personally, I've never had that kind of situation with a brand ever. And that's not because there's anything magical. It's just because of the ethics statement. It's because of clarity when it comes to expectations and communication. I've never had to deal with that because before, it's not even, I said earlier, I send the ethics statement out every day, which is true, but I don't send it out to everybody. I only send it out to people that I'm even remotely considering partnering with or being interested in working with in some way. So most things I'll just say no. And sometimes I do just delete the email without replying to it, especially if doesn't really seem like it's addressed to me very personally. It's just sort of like a form copy and paste letter. Other times I'll try to reply politely. I kind of do have a copy and pasted polite decline thing, which I figure if someone pasted a polite introduction, I can paste a polite decline to that. But I can't do that all the time. There's only so many hours in the day, and there's only so many like polite declining offer emails I can send in a day. But if there's something that I'm actually considering, curious about, interested in, whether it's a small company or a super well-known brand, the first thing is touch base with them, make an introduction, and then send the ethics statement. And then I don't just say here's the ethics statement and assume that they read it, but I also highlight some of the main points, which is usually specifically that I don't make videos in exchange for products. I've even said in the past, if you're comfortable with the idea of sending something into a black hole, then yes, go ahead and send it to me. Even if it's something that I think I would definitely want to make a video about, I don't know what's going to happen in a few weeks or a month or whatever, and I cannot guarantee that. And then, the ethics statement kind of guides things because companies will then say, well, what if we pay you? Instead of just sending you something, we'll pay you to make a video on it. And it's it's not that I'm against sponsored content, but I am against sponsored reviews because then it's not really a review. If I'm if GoPro sends me a GoPro and says make a video on it or don't, just have fun with it. Okay, I feel like I can make a pretty objective review on it. If GoPro sends me a GoPro and then also pays me $7,000 or something, and what I'm creating is supposed to be a review and not a product showcase or a highlight, it's a little bit of a gray area. And that's why I just don't do those kinds of things. But what that does is it means before anything is even sent out, before any discussion is had, we're all on the same page. And I just tell them specifically take a look at my ethics statement. There's a few things I'd really like to highlight, especially this point, that point, the other point. The reason for this is I just want to make sure we're on the same page. And then a phrase that I say a lot is I like to try and create a win-win-win scenario for me, the viewer, and the brand. So I only like to participate or work if I feel like that's something that we can create for everybody. And that's what's going to be best for everybody, and that's what's going to help me continue to build and maintain the relationship that I've built up with my audience over the years. And just kind of explaining it as succinctly as possible like that has really, really helped. And every once in a while, a brand will reach out again after they send something and say hey, how are you enjoying the blank? Or, you can kind of see they might say, hey, we sent you a thing. Did you know there's an update for it? That's pretty exciting. Like, you can tell they would like you to make a video about it, but that's about as aggressive as it ever gets. And I do try to consciously give feedback on products. Even if I don't make a video on it, I can say like, hey, yeah, I've been using the thing for whatever, and this is what I really like about it. This is what I kind of notice I'm struggling with, or whatever. Like I don't just take it and disappear, but I do try and provide feedback, even if it never shows up in a video. But point being, that clear communication from the get-go means that I've never gotten those like aggressive, where's the video? You said you were going to give a video in exchange for a product thing. And I feel like every single time I've seen somebody complain about that, it's because they didn't set up clear expectations from the beginning. So those are two concerning trends that I've noticed, is creators sort of bragging about basically just being rude to companies, and creators complaining about being harassed for creating content because they were sent something for free. I think those are big issues that are facing the creator community. And I think it's also, as we go into this, important to remember that there's sort of an interesting way that like affiliate or influencer marketing works from a company's point of view. And every company is a little bit different, but there's probably somebody or a department that's in charge of reaching out to people and building these connections and setting out products. And they all do work a little differently. Some of them have quotas, like they have a budget they need to spend every quarter on this stuff. Like they really want to sponsor your video because they need to sponsor X amount of videos or X amount of dollars on sponsored videos. Or they want to send out products because they need to be sending out. They need to say to their supervisor, yes, I sent out, 25 units last week. Or they need to be able to say like, yeah, we hopefully have videos coming in from this person, that person, that person. Like they're a person doing their job a lot of the times. And they have someone to report to, and they're just trying to do their job. Sometimes, especially with some of the like bigger, it's like the bigger companies who are also a little less reputable, it might be more of a numbers thing. Like the more people they contact and reach out to and get responses from, the more like commissions they get or something, which is where you get a lot of those emails that are just like, hi, dear, we are the leading producer of photographic equipment. And it's like, I've never heard of your company, like GXYZ94. That doesn't sound like a catchy brand name I've ever heard of. And that's kind of that situation. But if you get an email from someone from a reputable company that you're probably familiar with, and they say, hey, I'm like the community manager or the influencer marketing person or just the marketing person, they're probably just trying to do their job. And if you just throw like the F-bomb at them or something super rude or something super demanding at them, it just isn't right. Like it just is not the way to do things when you're dealing with other people. And I think that's a very crucial thing to remember, is that you're dealing with other people. And I guess I should also say, before I kind of I have like bullet points, like 6 points that I want to go over specifically, but this is sort of the build up to all of that. The other thing is these brand communications do depend on the context. So if a brand reaches out to you, that's just going to naturally put you in the driver's seat and in a more powerful position to negotiate. If a brand reaches out to you, and I think I talked about this a few weeks ago, but sometimes I'll be sitting here just doing my thing, and then I'll get an email that says like, hey, we'd love to sponsor something. I'm like, okay, cool. Here's my rate for sponsored thing. And then they say like, oh, based on your numbers and your views, we cannot do that. We can do a fraction of that. And then I feel bad because I'm like, I was just sitting here minding my own business. You reached out to me, and then now you're telling me, you're like negging me, telling me that like I'm not good enough to work with you. But it's like I wasn't even the one asking in the first place. But typically when someone reaches out to you, they reached out to you for a reason, and you can remember that. Like, why did you even send the email in the first place? It might be your job to try to like spend as little money as possible for the company and get marketing. But at the same time, if they reached out to you, there must be a reason for that. And it's okay to keep that in mind. Not that you're going to be aggressive with them, but in knowing like, okay, I'm not going to do a sponsored piece of content for less than this rate. And if they don't pay that rate, then you can just say, that's no problem. Like, totally understand. Maybe we'll touch base again in the future. All the best to you and your team. That's all it takes. You don't have to be rude or aggressive. If you're reaching out to companies, which there's nothing wrong with, if you know, hey, I make this kind of content and it would work really well with this company that I love, but they don't know you exist yet, if you can just reach out to them sometime and say, hey, this is what I'm doing, or I have an idea for something, would you be able to help me out with this? Would you want to sponsor something for this? That can be a great way to make a connection, but it does put them in the driver's seat because you've reached out to them. If you reach out and you say, hey, would you like to sponsor a video? And they say, sure, we'd love to sponsor something. We can pay you, $250 for a sponsored thing. And you're like, oh, I only do sponsored content for $5,000 minimum. And it's like, well, I mean, they'll just say no and leave because you're the one that reached out to them, So that is part of it. A good way to get on the radar of companies that you might want to, a good way to get on people's radar is just to do what you do, honestly, and let people know that you're doing it. So if you're making a review on a product and you share that review, hey, here's my video this week. It's a review on this product. It's awesome. And then you tag the company on social media, Instagram, Twitter, whatever, wherever you're sharing your stuff. That can be a good way to get on the radar because then they see it. And oftentimes, if you do good stuff and they like what you do, that's when you'll just get an email or a message from them saying, hey, we love this. If you need anything from us, let us know. And it opens up a line of communication, which is always nice, even if you don't have anything immediately planned. Just building up relationships, getting to know people, letting them know how you do business is a smart thing to do. And sometimes that can take a lot of time, at least for me. I know I've spent sometimes a year or more just building relationships with people at companies before we even consider doing anything together. And sometimes we never even do. It just sort of is what it is. So with all that in mind, let's jump into some specific things for influencer etiquette. So this has to do with, we've talked about what you need to do to, defend yourself and stand up for yourself. But what about how you can look at things from the other person's point of view, from the brand's point of view, and how do you approach that? One of my good YouTube friends is Nick Lewis, who has a channel called Nick Lewis, and he does a lot of interior design related videos, and his channel really blew up pretty quickly. So I think it was I think he made his first video in the summer of 2020, so just about 2 years ago. That was his first video he ever made. And then by the end of 2020, his channel had 4,000 or 5,000 subscribers. And then I think it was in December of 2020, he went from 4,000 or 5,000 to 70,000 and then past 100,000. And now he's over 300,000. And his videos get a ton of reach and ton of engagement. It's absurd. He does really, really well on YouTube. And initially, it happened so fast. He was just relying on AdSense and ad revenue, but then, branch out into sponsored content and that kind of stuff. And Nick is great because YouTube is not the first thing he's done. He's had other lives. And in talking with him, he told me once that one of his previous lives was being a business owner and being the owner of a business where he had to reach out to influencers for marketing. So he was on the other side of things where he was the business that was needing the marketing from the influencers. And now that he's on the creator side of that, or the influencer side of it, when he deals with brands, he knows what it's like to be in their shoes. And he has told me that a lot of them really appreciate that because he can frame things in, it's not just this is what I demand and what my terms are, but it's this is what I do and this is why that's actually beneficial to you, and this is why I have this condition, but also with you in mind, understanding that they are a brand, they're trying to sell products, they're trying to earn revenue, trying to attract customers, trying to market their stuff. And there's nothing inherently wrong with any of that, and we can work together. But just showing that there's an awareness of where they're coming from has really helped to build relationships and open a lot of doors with a lot of different brands for him. So that leads me into my first piece of influencer etiquette advice, and that really is the fact that a lot of people from companies who deal with influencer marketing are shocked by kindness and shocked by politeness. And I don't mean this in a sociopathic way, but you can use that to your advantage because hopefully you're a kind, polite, well-mannered person just in general. You say please and thank you, and you try to be empathetic. But it is kind of crazy because the number of times where without really doing anything weird, just being on time for a call, making a silly joke in an email, even literally just saying thank you for sending something out, the number of times that has happened, that has been met with a reply from the company saying that they appreciate that so much, and they rarely hear those kinds of things, and it totally makes their day. if a company sends a product and I really like it and I'm using it a lot, and I just write back and say like, hey, like, thank you so much for saying this. It's been awesome. Like, it's really helped me do blah, blah, blah better. And I appreciate it so much. It means a lot that you show your support like that. People like will really write back like, thank you. It really means a lot to hear this. Like, we don't hear that a lot. I've even learned that a lot of people won't even confirm they received something. So a company will say, sure, we'll send you out our product, and they'll oftentimes send you a tracking number, and they never hear anything again, which even if you're not on the hook for like making a video or doing anything, it's just good etiquette to let them know, hey, I received the thing today. I can't wait to dive into it, learn more about it. I'll be sure to ask you if I have any questions. Just letting them know that you actually got it, saying thank you, just basic manners. These are things that are very rare. So I think it's very important for you to make sure that you do those things. You just keep doing the good things that hopefully like your parents taught you when you were a kid. Just being a polite, kind person, because that is like the right thing to do. I think ultimately it makes the world a better place, right? Because people are kind to each other and it makes things better. But from a more selfish point of view, it also actually makes you stand out because you quickly learn, oh my gosh, most people are kind of awful at this and don't have any soft skills at all. And if you just send a thank you email, suddenly you have stood out just because you weren't a rude jerk to somebody, which is crazy to me, but very, very true. So just having good manners, having good communication, good manners, saying please and thank you, all the basic stuff that like your mom would have told you when she dropped you off for like a sleepover at a friend's house. Do all of that stuff when you're dealing with a brand or a company, and it's really, really good. Now, the next piece of advice is to definitely protect yourself and what you've built. So yes, I do want to focus on the brand side of things, but you do need to protect the thing that you have made. So that's why having something like an ethics statement, or at least some standards or some guidelines in place that you can refer to make sure that you do things the way that you need to do them, and you don't kind of get, it's almost like, I don't know, buying a car and going into a car dealership and you're like, okay, I'm going to spend this much money on this car. And it's sort of easy for the salesperson to like, well, what about this other model of car that you didn't really want? And, it's only a little bit more expensive. And yeah, I know you really wanted that feature, but you don't really need it. How about this over here? And you sort of accidentally find yourself doing something that you didn't want to do at all. Having those guidelines will help you protect yourself and what you've built. But finding a way to communicate those politely, firmly, politely, letting people know what I'll do, I guess I should say, is when I send out the ethics statement and I highlight a couple points, especially if it's someone I've never talked to before, I will oftentimes just say, let me know if this works for you. Some companies love it, some companies don't. I totally get it either way, but this is just what has worked best for me and my audience in the past. And, that way it's like, I even let them know I will not have hard feelings or say bad things about you if you won't agree to this. It just means we won't work together, but that's okay. Like, it doesn't mean either of us is doing anything wrong. It's just not the right time for us. And that brings me to my next point, which is, as an influencer or dealing with brands or companies, please remember that respect is a two-way street. You do not want to seem like somebody who is just there to like leech free products and services from people and from companies. And at the same time, you don't want to feel like they're just trying to take advantage of you. So that's where building those relationships, those respectful relationships, really is a two-way street. And it's okay if you don't feel like a company is respecting you. If they're being insulting and being rude, you can politely let them know that, we're done here and this isn't working for you right now. And you can remove yourself from that situation. You don't have to be like somebody who just lets yourself be abused, but you also don't have to be rude or awful about that. So respect is this two-way street that's often built over time. If you get to know someone from a company, even if you've never done anything specific, just checking in with them regularly is part of how you would build a relationship. Bouncing ideas off of them, asking them questions. And I don't mean this in like, this almost sounds like I'm like, this is how you manipulate someone. But I mean, literally, like the number of road sponsored videos on my channel right now is 0. Rode has sent me some free stuff. They've never sponsored a video, but the number of times that I've reached out to them with a question about something is a ton. Because sometimes people will ask me like, hey, why was there reverb on the Rodecaster Pro and now there's no reverb on the Rodecaster Pro? It's something I get that question 5 times a week. So then I'll just ask Rode, hey, I'm getting a question a lot. Some of the beta firmware had a reverb feature that I thought was really cool, but it was taken away from the release. Like, why is that? And then they can let me know, which in that case, from what I gather, because they're also like, they have proprietary information that they can't just share all their secrets with me just because I asked. But from what I understand, when it comes to onboard effects, is just the internal processing power of the Rodecaster to do all that stuff is a little limited, which is why on some devices like the Tascam Mixcast 4, they have their application that has like tons, their podcast recording software has tons of effects in it that aren't in the actual unit itself, because then it can work on your computer's processing power, not the built-in processing power. So, but that made sense. Oh, okay. Like the Rodecaster is not an M1 Max computer. Like it's a small circuit board chip from 3 or 4 years ago. There's only so much it can do. Cool. Now I understand that. But the point is, instead of me not answering a question, instead of me giving out the wrong information, I can just ask the company to get the correct information, which is good for me. It's good for the person who asked the question. And the company actually appreciates it too, because now I'm not just giving out bad information. I'm taking the time to give correct information. And I've even done that sometimes when, like a product will come out from a company that seems very similar, or there's a really direct competing product. I'll just ask them like, hey, I saw this came out. Can you tell me why you think yours is better? And most of the time, they're not going to be disparaging to the other thing, but they'll say like, oh yeah, we're really proud of, it is like marketing material, but it at least gives you some knowledge and information that you can choose to incorporate how you want. And again, it builds a relationship because they see you working to do the best job that you possibly can. And, tagging people in social media so they go, oh, dang, like Tom uploaded another video. That's really cool. Like talked about this thing. Look at that. It's not even a dedicated video about our product, but it shows up at the end. All of that stuff. It's little things over long periods of time. That's how you build relationships. And when you just check in with people, if there's a holiday, you can just say like happy holidays. If you happen to know if somebody said, I'll be out of town because I'm going on a vacation or something, it's okay to then in your next email a few weeks later to say like, hey, I hope you had a really great vacation. I have a question about blah, blah, blah. Those little things are what help you build relationships, which is just, again, common decency, stuff you should just do with humans. But it's really missing from this like influencer brand partnership world. It just, nobody's ever been properly trained in how to do this stuff. And I think for a lot of people, so someone like Nick, for example, who has a previous career in business and building up soft skills and relationship with people, he's going to be much more adept at that. But for other people who've never had to do that, or I think for a lot of younger people who might jump into something like content creating without having other jobs or another career first, you've never built up these skills before. So you have to learn it along the way. And it's the same way I remember telling my students that if anytime something happened, when they would get scholarships, like reminding them, hey, you need to write a thank you letter to the organization that gave you a scholarship. I'll help you write it. I'll proofread it for you. But, like they would be super happy about the scholarship, but it's like they just gave you thousands of dollars. You should say thank you. Like that's important. And it's also important for the people who gave the scholarship, because then they take the thank you letter and they show whoever it was that's funding the thing, like, look, here's a student saying thank you and how they're going to use it. So it all benefits everybody. So respect is a two-way street. That's important. And the next point is just to reemphasize how essential it is to have clear communication with the brand. It doesn't mean you have to agree on everything all the time. It doesn't mean you have to say yes to everything that they do, but just having clear communication right from the beginning. If you say, yes, I'll take a product from a brand, and then they send it to you, and then they ask you, hey, when can we expect the video on this product? And then you say, oh, I don't do videos in exchange for free products. Like, I'll do it if I want. You did not set that expectation before they gave you a free thing. And it doesn't mean that you're now obligated to do what they say, but it does mean that you guys were not on the same page and they had different expectations than you did. So just from the beginning, and sometimes I'll be annoying about it. Believe it or not, I can be annoying about things. And I'll say things a few times. Like I meet someone, I introduce myself, here's the ethics statement, here's the way I approach stuff. Cool. We talk a little bit. Maybe a few weeks later, they say like, hey, now, would we be able to send you something? And I'll say like, yeah, just a reminder, blah, blah, blah. Here is, my conditions before you even think of sending something my way. And ultimately, what this all does is help to show that you can look at things from their point of view too. That's what it comes down to. Like, I feel like I've said that several different ways now throughout this episode. But by just being clear about, your terms or how you approach things before you want someone to send something out, it shows that you're aware that it takes costs and resources to ship something for a company to, hey, here's a product that we're going to send out. That means that's a product we're not going to be selling to a customer anymore. So, just showing them that you understand that, even if it's a big company that can more than afford it and has a budget for it and doesn't really, care that they're losing one unit or whatever, just showing that you're aware of it is very, very important. I mentioned, Heather and I went to New York. Last week's episode, I talked about we went to New York, and originally that was for a brand, like a brand thing. A company paid for us to go out. The event ended up being canceled, and they still let us keep the plane tickets just because they felt bad about everything. Everything changed like 5 times, and eventually got canceled. And they were just like, as a show of good faith, if you want the tickets, just have a fun trip. So they paid for our plane tickets. But before that, when they initially wanted us to go out, it was supposed to just be me for a day. And then I asked, well, could my return ticket be a few days later? Because we'd love to get a ticket for my wife. We weren't asking them to pay for Heather to go or anything, even though they ultimately did. And then I started asking other questions, like, oh, could we leave on this day? Could we do this? And I felt bad asking for specifics, even though, as I talked about last week, I actually should have been more specific about certain things, but I'm also learning too. But my point is, when I was asking them, could we change this date? Could we do this? Could we do that? I literally did say, feel free to say no, because I understand you're not a travel agency. It's not part of what you're doing. If there's somebody else that I need to talk to for this question, or if it's just not possible, that's completely fine. I know that you're very busy, and this is just one part of your day. That's something that I always say a lot, just to let people know that I understand their one email with me is not the only thing they're doing in their day. Saying something in a message like, I know that you're very busy. I know this might not be your responsibility. So if there's somebody better that you need me to talk to, please point me in the right direction. Just showing that you understand they're a person who's trying to do a job. They're probably very busy. They probably don't have enough time in the day, just like most people do. It really does go a long way, and it can help other people feel appreciated too, just by doing that. And again, anything you can do to show that you can see things from their points of view is really, really helpful. Now, the next point, which is it's a good, business customer service rule, is as an influencer to always over deliver and under promise. Make sure, I guess the typical way to say it is under promise and over deliver. So even if you're 99.9% sure that you're going to make a video on something and they're going to send it out, don't guarantee that. There have been so many times where a brand's going to send something out like, and I know for sure, like, I'm going to make a video about it. Of course, it fits in perfectly with my channel. It might even be something I was planning to buy anyway, which has happened a couple times where, like, literally I have something in my B&H shopping cart and I'm like waiting for my next paycheck so that I can order it and then make a video on it. And then the company will be like, hey, do you want to test out this thing? And I'm like, I do. So I know that I'm planning to make a video on it, but I'm not going to guarantee that. I'm not going to set that expectation right away. I'm going to free myself from that stress. I'm going to take the concern away from them, because now if they feel that they've gotten into a commitment with the creator, like we're sending a product, they're going to get a video, now that is more work on their end, because that person will usually have to follow up with you to make sure that you're keeping up on your end of the deal. Whereas if all they need to tell their boss is, yeah, I sent out 5 units last week or whatever, that's very different than, yes, I sent out 5 units and I'm supposed to get 5 videos back, and no, I don't know where 4 of those videos are. I've only gotten 1 back, and then they're going to keep getting harassed from their higher up person about, like, where's the videos? And it's a very a very tough thing to do there. So by doing that, it takes concerns away from them. And then it will be a happy surprise when you let them know that you did publish something. So you're not guaranteeing to do it. It just turns out that you wanted to do it. It was a good fit. You make your video, make your piece of content, you put it out there, and then you can send them an email and say, hey, just letting you know this morning I published a video about the thing, and here it is if you want to check it out. Thanks again so much for sending it my way. It's been great to work with over the past few weeks or whatever. I've never had anyone not be super excited to get that email because it's great, and that, again, helps to build those kinds of relationships. And ultimately, then, the last point to remember to help guide all of this is to remember to serve your audience. So we are looking at things from a brand's point of view today, but it's also really important to look at things from your audience's point of view and to never, ever forget that, because even the best brands that you have the best relationship with, the reason that they're working with you is because they are leveraging what you've built. You have taken time, you've put energy and resources into creating something, and no matter what the brand says, as much as they just might like you, they're leveraging that fact. They know that, hey, if we give you something and it shows up on your desk, that's going to be in front of however many eyeballs. Or, if you happen to say that you use our product, that's really great advertising to your audience of however big your audience might be. They are leveraging what you've built. Building an audience is the same thing as building trust. It takes a very, very, very long time to build it up, and you can destroy it in a second. So make sure that, everything that you're working with is in line with your audience and will serve your audience. And that's what I meant. As cheesy as it sounds to tell a brand, like, I want to create a win-win-win scenario, and that sounds like corporate speak 101, it is really true. Because if there is something that fits for you and your channel, so as a creator, you're like, wow, this is perfect. Like, I definitely want to talk about this, definitely want to work with this product, service, whatever, because it's exciting to you, and the people who watch your stuff, who consume your content, that they're going to be interested in it too, or that it will be helpful to them, then that's also, of course, good for the brand, because now they're not going to have to fight to make you like something. They also now have the most perfect targeted advertising ever that, a company could have only dreamed of having a few years ago, all through the thing that you have built. So it's very, very important to protect that. But it does mean that by protecting it, when the stars do align and everything does work out, it really does work out great for everybody. And even as a creator, when it works out well, sometimes you might feel nervous about doing sponsored content or whatever. But if it's done right, a lot of times your audience is actually going to be excited for you, because they'll want the thing, or they'll be interested in it, maybe, but they'll also be excited for you because it's like, wow, they know that this thing is in line with you and your values and what you create, and now you get to work with it, and they're excited for you for that. So when you do it right, it's just so much easier and so much more organic for everybody. And it's definitely better for the brand that way. I don't know if these brands necessarily care, but there are certain brands, especially on YouTube, that have essentially become jokes or memes. So you might want to take that sponsorship for a VPN or for a mobile game or whatever, and you make your own decisions your own way. But at a certain point, when it becomes a joke, where if someone's making a stereotypical YouTuber script and they use your brand as this video is sponsored by blah, 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 that's probably not great. Maybe some brands don't care, no publicity is bad publicity kind of a thing. But for a lot of brands, especially quality ones, that's probably not what they want. And that's the kind of thing that can happen if the partnership and the relationship isn't right. If it's not built on a solid foundation, if it doesn't truly fit the creator and the audience, that's when that kind of stuff can just I don't know, happen that way. And there's always a balance between you need to pay your bills and someone wants to sponsor you and serving your audience. And that's, hopefully all of the other things that we've talked about in infinite other podcast episodes about how to do that puts you in a position where you don't feel like I have to take this weird mobile game sponsorship because otherwise I won't be able to pay my rent this month. You don't want to be in that situation. You want to be in a situation where you can say no to the thing that makes no sense so that you can say yes to the things that do make a lot of sense. I sound like the most stereotypical self-help person saying that right now, but it is so friggin' true. And this is really simple. I mean, those are really the main points that I have learned are really valuable when it comes to influencer etiquette. And surprise, surprise, a lot of them are just good advice for life in general, not just like influencers working with brands, but just being a polite, kind, empathetic person who communicates clearly and effectively and tries to put yourself in somebody else's shoes when you're dealing with them. That's ultimately what it comes down to. But those are very important skills that are very often overlooked in this world or this corner of the world, the whole creator influencer space. And as I mentioned at the very beginning of this episode, the reason I wanted to wrap up this season with that is because I think it's very helpful. I haven't really heard about this being talked about very much, and I have seen what I think is a disturbing trend in the rise of creators bragging about basically how rude and terrible they're being to brands and companies. So I usually don't go like, wow, good for them. You really showed it, stuck it to the man. I usually kind of lose a little bit of respect for the creator when I see something like that. And again, you don't want to do something for the moment when it comes to the thing that you're making. You want to build relationships, say yes or no to opportunities in a way that even if it's not maximizing your profit and your income and your revenue right now, it's going to hopefully let you continue to do these things and this thing for the long term, for a long period of time, because that's my goal. And I'm guessing if you're doing this with some kind of approach like I have, 46 minutes into this episode, it's probably your goal to do things for the long term, and you want to build that solid foundation. Speaking of solid foundations, as we wrap up today, I wanted to talk about what I've learned from switching to a 10-week podcast season versus a 21-week podcast season. It has been very, very different. So this is episode 114, 115 of this podcast, which is pretty cool and pretty crazy. And I'm still learning and figuring it out very, very much. So if you don't know, the first 5 seasons of this show were 21 episodes each. And then I would take like a couple of weeks off and come back with another season. And I liked that because 21 episodes felt substantial, felt significant. It's like a TV show. When a TV show used to be like 24 episodes a season, it was like, yeah, it's a good run of episodes. And in more recent years, it's like, wow, a new season is coming out. It's 6 episodes maybe. It's like, oh man, that doesn't feel like very much. So I just felt like that was good. And ultimately, it was kind of arbitrary because when I started the podcast, I just kept making episodes. I'd wanted to do a podcast for so long. I just had idea after idea after idea. And it was after 21 weeks that I felt like, oh, I think I'm out of ideas and energy. So maybe I should take a break. And then I took a few weeks off and I was like, well, I guess now that I've taken a break and I kind of like retooled a few things, like, oh, that would be like, this could be season 2. And then I just did 21 more episodes and then 21 more and 20 more. And I just kept doing that. But this time I only did 10 episodes. And I have to tell you, I'm glad I did the 21 episodes things. It worked for me at the time. I learned a lot. But oh my gosh, I liked this 10 episode season so much more from the production side of things. It's so much easier to wrap my head around. I know you can make notes and things, but it's really hard when you're outlining an episode and you're like, wait, I think I talked about something 18 weeks ago. Did I say that? Is that relevant now? Like, not that this show specifically is like each season has a story arc or something that I have to follow, but just, I don't want to be too repetitive. I know certain themes will pop up over and over again. And there's certain, I want to do a Q&A episode every season, but I don't want to do like 3 Q&A episodes every season. So keeping track of all that kind of stuff was just so much easier with 10 episodes. I was able to outline things before the season started in a way that was easy to see the whole thing at once because 10 was just a more manageable number, but also in a way that let me have some flexibility. So there was still room to change things, add things, remove things as the season went on. It's not like I planned it all out back in January and just sort of was like, this is what it has to be. I can't change it all the time, but it was just much easier to wrap my head around. It's also just from a creation standpoint, like, sometimes doing all the things that need to get done every week, sometimes making the podcast is tiring. And knowing that, like, hey, it's only a couple more weeks and then I can take a break, or, it's one less thing on my schedule for a little bit. Not that I don't love it and enjoy it, but that is kind of nice, right? I used to say that when I was working. I was like, I love my job, but I'm always excited for the weekend. Like, doesn't mean I hate my job, but it means I really like the weekend. So, so anyway, that's what I've learned with 10 episodes, just so much more manageable. So season 7, also going to be 10 episodes. So like I mentioned at the beginning of this, I'll be taking the entire month of May off. Actually, I'll probably be recording episodes during May and scheduling them to be proactive. But there won't be any new podcast episodes during the month of May. Podcast season 7 will premiere on Monday, June 6th, 2022. And in the meantime, since I'm not producing an episode, if you're like, gee, what am I going to do with that hour every week? Well, you know what you could do? You can make your very own podcast. So again, if you want to enroll in either of my podcast courses, the Podcaster Playbook or the Podcaster Idea Book, you can get 15% off during the entire month of May, during the entire hiatus between seasons. You can just go to HiMyNameIsTom.com, click on courses, and then use promo code HOORAY to get 15% off either or both of the courses. And of course, that would be a fun idea. We've talked about the courses a lot, but the playbook is a production-based course. So if you want to learn how to produce an episode, which through that process is also going to build up a workflow that you can repeat and use for future episodes, which will make it easy to not just do it once, but an actual season. So that's everything from setting up a space to record all the way to getting your finished episode submitted to podcast directories and stuff. All of that is included in the Podcaster Playbook. And then the Podcaster Idea Book is a separate course. It's all about ideation. So coming up with an idea that is sustainable, it's going to get you past, the first couple episodes, which are usually pretty easy because everybody's excited about their ideas. But getting to the point where you're like, okay, I'm 35 episodes into this and my idea is still going strong, that kind of a thing. So that's what the Podcaster Idea Book is all about. You can enroll in one or both, however you want, whatever works best for you. And they both also do come with access to a private Discord server if you need a little extra help or support or just want to show stuff off along the way. So thank you very, very much for sticking through another season here, podcast season 6. I hope you have a safe, happy, healthy month. And yeah, if you have anything that you want to say, if you have ideas, if you want to be included in the season 7 premiere, feel free in the next few weeks, anytime, to go to HiMyNameIsTom.com, and then right there in the middle of the homepage is the button to just record a message, and I'll send it straight to the podcast, and then I can see you in season 7. So have a great rest of your day, and I will see you next time.